Welcome to Banyan Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyan.com. Since 1970, Banyan Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyan.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy. Hello and welcome everybody to Branches of Wisdom, the Banyan Books live streaming event and podcast series. I'm your host, Ross McKeechee, and very excited today we have joining us Dr. Stephen Farmer. Before we bring him on, letting you know that although we have people joining us from all over the world for these live streaming events, the physical location of Banyan Books and Sound is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Also letting you know that most of Banyan's podcast and event series are free, and we welcome your donations to keep these programs accessible for all. So just go ahead and click on the PayPal link in the show description below. Also to let you know, towards the end of our conversation with Dr. Stephen Farmer today, we'll be taking questions from you, our live audience. So go ahead and type those in on the YouTube comments field, and we'll get to as many as we can. Dr. Stephen Farmer is a world-renowned author, teacher, shamanic practitioner, and soul healer. A best-selling author of Animal Spirit Guides, Healing Ancestral Karma, and Earth Magic, Dr. Farmer is also a licensed psychotherapist, ordained minister, and former college professor with 3 collegiate degrees. His extensive knowledge and experience enable him to offer an exceptional and transformative experience to his clients. Today, Dr. Stephen Farmer is with Banyan Books in conversation about his book, Healing Ancestral Family Patterns, a practical guide to ending the cycle of intergenerational trauma. With a unique blend of modern therapeutic techniques and ancient shamanic practices, this book offers a clear path to ancestral healing. Whether you're seeking to address deep-seated trauma, understand your family's history, or simply connect more deeply with your roots, the practices within will empower you to transform your ancestral patterns into sources of strength and resilience. According to Don Jose Ruiz, in this book, Dr. Stephen Farmer provides the medicine you need to heal your family's past. And if you want to learn more about today's honored guest, you can visit his website, which is drstephenfarmer.com. Banyan community, join me in a warm welcome for Dr. Stephen Farmer.
Well, thank you, Ross. I'm very impressed with you. Yeah, thank you, Ross. And you can hear me, right, everybody?
Yeah. It seemed like it was muted for a second there, but I hear you now.
Oh, it could have been something I tapped my hand on or something here, but thank you. Let me start again. Thank you very much. And thank everybody at Banyan Books, too, for hosting this and having me as a guest. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Really honored to have you.
And I think it's an important topic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have written about this. But I'll start with just a short story. A friend of mine, dear friend of mine, Gretchen, worked with an African healer, P.H. Muchala, and I trust I have his name correct. But something that she told me, I never actually met him, but she told me in an initial conversation with P.H. that he said something that really stayed with me, which is He got very sad at one point and just kind of shook his head slowly, and he said, "You've lost your ancestors." And obviously really stayed with me. You've lost your ancestors. And I know what he meant. I really understand what he meant, is that we've been disconnected in the larger culture from honoring the ancestral lineage, and thinking also of mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, etc., as ancestors. It's like that's a phenomenal way to think, for the Western mind. And so I've been called to, shall we say, to offer this as a way of introducing or reintroducing this idea that's as old as the human species have been around, as we've been around. And more importantly is that they can assist you in a couple of very significant ways: healing and guidance. And I think everyone that's listening would agree we need all the help we can with guidance. How do you, as much as possible, stay on purpose, stay on your life path, not veer or not get distracted for too long so that you can return to that. And I can testify from my own experience, the ancestors, as I've ever since Gretchen shared that with me about you've lost your ancestors, something clicked in me for that. Just said, I want to find them again. And I got the call. And as I think anybody can attest, Ross, I'm sure yourself too, is that it's like we're invited, to pursue a particular aspect. It's also something that can help us define or refine our purpose. What are we here on the planet for? These days in particular, I just know it in my heart of hearts so deeply that we need all the guidance that we can find, and not just from, let's say, other human beings. That's helpful too, but from those ordinarily non-visible beings, such as the ancestors, such as the spirit animals, not just the animals, but how they represent a spirit animal that's a collective, so to speak, of that particular species. As you mentioned, that's one of the books that's been very popular, is Animal Spirit Guides. But I'm talking about a different take on this, and that is receiving direct guidance and healing and working with the ancestors, to elicit healing for both oneself as well as, believe it or not, the ancestor. And the reason, and I should pause here, but I could say more about that too, Ross. Definitely. I've got a lot I can say about ancestors, and to renew that relationship, to find, unlike what PA said, you lost your connection. Okay, well, good. Let's wake up and let's find that connection again, and develop that relationship with those who have come before in our lineage.
Maybe we'll circle back to what exactly we're connecting to and how we go about that. But I wanted to maybe preface for our audience a little bit of context on what are ancestral family patterns. You've mentioned these 4 ways that they show up in us: physical, emotional, behavioral, and mental traits. Can you just kind of give a brief overview on that and how we can identify them as ancestral patterns in ourselves?
Well, first off, we start with some obvious things. If you look at your father, mother, your grandmother, your grandfather, perhaps when they were living, you can see that you have carried on certain characteristics, traits, etc. In any of those 4 dimensions. Physical, sure. It's easy to spot. I have, this is a little embarrassing, but I'll say it for our purpose. One thing that my older brother would constantly point out and tease me about sometimes is I have a fairly large head, 7.5 hat size. So, and then my brother, he was such a punk, God bless you, Wally, would tease me about it. He said, "Oh, crummy big head, crummy big." But I would look at my mother and I go, hers has pretty good size too. Things like that are really obvious, or the shape of the nose, color of the hair. Those are the obvious things that we get from our biological lineage, from our family. And we'll define ancestors as those who have come before us, that are now in spirit world, or we could say the afterlife. What we don't haven't attuned to, and I'm out, I've been tagged to teach this, is that we can contact them in the afterlife. So an ancestor, if we look at it from the family perspective, is, let's talk about maybe the previous 3 or 4 generations, because that's enough to be able to discern these characteristics that have been passed along through our DNA and our genetic expression of the DNA. So that's a way to start, is to think about the family lineage as ancestral. Some of the things I've looked at is, gosh, we're not going to talk about that here today. That's not what the topic is, but think about it. If you go back, keep going back, eventually you run into this theory that we've evolved from the apes. Now that's been contested, that maybe aliens came down or something like that. It's not a matter of trying to prove something with that. It's just to understand that our deepest ancestry, we are related to all the beings on this earth. Those trees outside my window, it's a hard one to grasp, but in one sense, they are ancestors. They were here first, before humans walked the earth. But let's bring it back here, to what I think is the most useful way to think about ancestors is the previous generations. 3 to 4 generations is where I cap it. And that's why the book Healing Ancestral Family Patterns really, although it delves into this idea of the depth of ancestry, but really the focal point really is on how on these 3 to 4 generations, and how, if you look at them, if you could draw a picture, it would be kind of a V. Here's you, and then next mom, dad, biological parents, and then grandma, grandpa, and then great grandfather, great grandmother, and then maybe great, but no, let's not go back too far. We don't need to go back too far to receive the benefits of the developing these relationships in an active way. So I think it's really critical. We're at a critical time in our relationship with the planet. And I know, hear that word, not just believe, I know the ancestors want to help us with that. And they'll help us one person at a time if need be. And that one person at a time, gang, is you who are listening to this. It's me that doing what I'm doing, my part in this, is to introduce this and elaborate on how the ancestors can help us. And I'll stop there. Just pause there for a sec, Ross.
Sure.
Not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did. I think we were talking a little bit about how the patterns show up in us as well. And so you talked about the physical, and then there's the emotional, behavioral, mental traits. I just wanted our audience to kind of grasp the kind of context of how these patterns show up in us. One of the things that you wrote in the book, I just want to quote it because it was very interesting to me, and I wanted to ask you about it. You said, as you'll see, when you heal ancestral patterns through the methods described in this book, the healing goes backward to your ancestors and forward to your descendants. So for me, I mean, I understand how it goes forward, but I wanted to know, how does the healing go backward to the ancestors?
Absolutely. Good question. And it sounds kind of mystical. How can you heal somebody who's already dead? One of the things I do as a shamanic practitioner, and I've done many of them, is something called the shamanic journey. The shamanic journey, in essence, is going into an altered state, typically using drumming, but it could be other ways as well, and moving into a place where you receive guidance. There's a guide there that often it could be a spirit animal. And they will then, when you set your intention, then the guides will help you with that. And I think it's important with the ancestors to develop that relationship, in part because they can provide this guidance. However, What I haven't, what I was shown in a series of journeys is what happens after the point of death. And I've been one of these characters that I've always been interested in the idea of death. In fact, I had said something funny a while back when I was thinking about it, and I did some journeys on it. I said, "Wow, this is cool, the afterlife. I can't wait to get there." And then I had to go, "Wait a minute, not yet. In time, I'll get there." But here's what I was shown, and it doesn't mean it's definitive or it's the last word on this. Okay, that's not the point. I was told very much so that this was shown to me because one, it's for you. Second is it's for you to teach too, to offer this as a possibility, offer it as a theory, if not a knowing from the shamanic journeys. And that's that when you die, you're not done. Sorry to break the news, gang. But when you're done, when you die, you're not done. There's still some things to clean up. There may be some amends that you need to make. People, go to see a medium if you have any doubts that you can communicate with an ancestor. Find a good medium or somebody who's got a reputation as a medium, and it's going to knock your socks off because there will be details that that the medium will share with you about your ancestors, about your family ancestral patterns, or your family ancestors. And I've been to mediums, really good ones, and I'll tell you, it's just amazing what happens. Anyway, enough of that. That I think validates what I'm saying here. They come to us. They'll come to us in dreams. They don't have a body. They don't need to worry about that. They travel in different ways. So when you heal, when you work with healing in the physical dimension, as you are now, whatever way that is, but particularly if you try this out, let's put it this way, try and see what happens. But as you solicit or elicit, the assistance of the ancestors, then they can help you heal as well. It might through direct intervention. It might be through guidance. Yes, so this is something hey Stephen, get this, go do this and this and this, and you'll find that you'll be able to heal that back pain, that you've had. I'm just making that up, but that's for instance. Or I liken it sometimes, Ross, to the whispers in the ear. We're not sure where that information is coming from, but I would be certain that as you focus and develop the relationship with the family ancestors, that you are going to fine tune it to where you can discern the messages that are coming through and how they will benefit descendants. Trying to think of well, I have a few personal examples of that. I have traveled to the afterlife. I've been introduced to it. Actually was told, for a period of time, this is for you. It's not about teaching. And then they gave me the go ahead to teach this. But at first I was told I had to absorb it. And I listen and I heed what I'm told, especially from the ancestors. The descendants will benefit too. Let me, if I may, segue to a contemporary science called epigenetics. That one, this is big. This is really big, epigenetics. I came across it in my research about ancestors as I was writing this book. I was blown away by it. That it's a fairly new science, and I do see how it can be called a science. Some examples of epigenetics of studies that were done would be with, for instance, the Holocaust survivors and their children. Yeah, this is so fascinating that there were many children and grandchildren that were born from the seeds of the Holocaust survivors, and many of these children exhibited symptoms as if they were actually in the concentration camps. Depression, lethargy, low energy, etc. Those kind of things that would be the result of the trauma that was experienced, or traumas that were experienced in a very dastardly situation. And so then the children will exhibit certain symptoms that today we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't think it's a disorder, by the way, but we'll call it PTSD. It's a very amazing way that things get reorganized so that we can continue to live and function, but then there's also limitations to it. Nightmares, excessive reaction, really extreme reactions to inconsequential kind of sounds, etc. Those kind of things. That's a couple of the symptoms of PTSD. And without having gone through trauma, the children and the grandchildren often had these similar kinds of symptoms. Dutch famine, when everybody was starving and children were born, and they again exhibited similar symptoms of what we'll call starvation. The gaunt, they didn't eat well, etc. And it's pinned down to the change in the way certain genes express. So it isn't that something shifts with the DNA, that's pretty solid, but the way the genes express, is what makes us with, a certain color hair, certain characteristics, features, etc., and certainly certain behaviors. And so when the genes get diminished, shall we say, that it changes the outward expression of the individual. And that's epigenetics. A third one would be the Vietnam War. When people came back from the Vietnam War and had children, again, symptoms of trauma, even though they weren't in the war. So to me, that's really solid evidence as to how that can be transmitted to our descendants. That's, you could say, the bad news, good news, bad news, good news. The good news is, what is amazing these days is we have a number of ways of healing from trauma. And whether that's directly induced or whether it's passed along in the genetic expression. Some of these I practice, and there's very, very effective tools, techniques, etc., to assist someone from healing from the trauma, or from a child who was born and raised with that epigenetic arc, that's carrying the symptoms of the trauma without having had a particularly rough life. So it's pretty fascinating. I think it's really fascinating. So
Yeah.
Just to close that, Ross, so therefore, when you work with the ancestors in some ways that I can tell you, and also you can read the book, and it benefits the descendants, because you can also do some healing work with the descendants. But first, recognize that they may be carrying some of the wounds or the effects of the wounding that took place in you. And now you get a chance to work with them and help them to heal from that, so they don't have to carry it any further.
One of the things that you talk about in chapter 2 is family secrets. And you write that due to cultural and societal prohibitions, certain facts about our families typically remain repressed, along with the strong feelings associated with them. Unfortunately, feelings like rage, lust, guilt, or fear, as well as unacceptable behaviors like incest, addictions, or eating disorders, are often expressed in some way in spite of our attempts to hold them at bay. I'm really curious, because I think this is very much connected to what you were just touching on with the epigenetics. How do these family secrets possibly show up in our genetics or in our emotional life, our relationships? And how do we try and identify them and work with these family secrets?
Very good question, Ross. I think first we start with something called addictions. That's kind of a broad category. But I recognize I had their deceased, two brothers and a sister, and they had a different father. So there was a mixture of the genetic imprint, from me and from them. Had a different dad. But it's amazing to me when I look at the family history, the secretiveness, as you pointed out, of these addictions. My God bless him, and I don't want to denigrate my father. He did. I feel very healed with him and our relationship, in part because I've had contact with him, in the afterlife. But even before that, just doing some of my own work and seeing some of the disposition I have, towards addictive behavior, whether it's behavior or whether it's substance addiction or whatever it might be. He was alcoholic. He died of his alcoholism. It makes me very, very sad to say that, but I feel comfortable sharing it, but it does make me sad. He went into the hospital. My mother had died, probably a year before, and he ended up going in the hospital. He stayed with my sister, but he goes in the hospital and he's not drinking anymore. So he ends up having convulsions. They're called delirium tremens, DTs, where the body shakes so violently and it just killed him. The withdrawal, the lack of that continued substance addiction is what killed him. I look at my brother, who technically would be a half brother, different father. My brother Wally, bless you. Again, sad. I'm bringing up all the people, my ancestors. He died of an overdose. So you're starting to think maybe there's something to this, this pattern that shows up. I'm not sure about my mother. I'm not real sure if she was addictive or not. I think she was. I don't know her entire history, so I'm really not sure. But I had a feeling that something was going on around sex, sex addiction. Forgive me, Mother, but it's helping people heal for me to share this. So thank you for that. My sister was the one that seemed to come through the healthiest, to tell you the truth, as I still don't think there was much addictive, compulsive kind of behavior with her. She was just a very sweet woman. But anyway, that from a personal example, that gives you an example. So then, I had a couple of periods in my life where I just did the same thing. I enacted through a substance. Dare I say this? Yes. Okay. This is a little embarrassing to say, but if it works for somebody to learn from this, great. There was a period of time when I had read something about cocaine and that cocaine was not addictive. Wrong. So I went through a string of several weeks, where I was abusing it, overusing it. Well, period, using it, period. And almost killed myself. So that's how powerful something like that can be. And I don't blame my father. I'm over that. I've done a lot of work with this. I don't blame him. I don't blame my mother. But I do know that my grandfather also was alcoholic, which was the most immediate drug that you could have, is go down to the liquor store and you got your alcohol. So that's a personal example of how that can carry itself through, and also that how you can heal from that stuff so that this subsequent generations don't have to deal with it. And I'm very pleased with, I've got two daughters, and neither one of them has, to my knowledge, have had any substance addictions that I'm aware of. So through the healing that took place following my experiences and my vow, to heal. And again, there's opportunities available today to heal a lot of this stuff, and the ancestors can support you in that. That's the magic of it. And I know it sounds kind of mystical, but again, I'll attest to that. You know, I could hear my mother's, my father's voice, etc. You know, they talk to me, they come to me. I dream. Sometimes they show up in dreams in different ways. They give me good advice, etc. And I feel really cherished and cared for, not just by the mother and father, but by my grandparents too, and the lineage that goes back.
Wonderful. Two things, Stephen. First, I just want to remind our live audience that we'll be taking your questions for Dr. Stephen Farmer in the last 15 minutes or so. So keep them coming in the comments field on YouTube. And then you're talking about all these profound experiences and connections with your ancestors. So let's say I'm someone who has no experience with this. Where would I start in trying to build that connection with my own ancestors to help with my healing and getting some guidance?
Yeah, suspend your disbelief. That's the first thing. You know, don't believe it or disbelieve it. Put all that aside. That's not the point. It's your experience that really counts. You know, try these things out and you'll find out from your own experience. Don't just listen to me or read the book. You know, do that. Yeah, that helps. It points the way. And other teachers also you can lean on for this. But it's essentially what your experience is. So be open to it. Number one, you know, just see what happens. You might want to start a journal, you know, of experiences like this. When you pray or when you pause and listen, as I shared with you earlier, very briefly, I won't go into it, but in detail, but I'm probably close to 14 years, somewhere in there. I've kept a journal online where I write, you know, each day, and then I do downloads. And where I get the information from is my guides, but specifically the ancestors. So here's where you start. Okay, that's one, is suspend belief, disbelief. Don't try to believe it or disbelieve. That's not the point. Try these things out. Second, see if you can draw a little map, like a V. You know, mom, dad here, grandma, grandpa here, you know, great grandma, grandpa, up to maybe, again, 3, maybe 4 generations, some of whom you may not know their names or not, but go ahead and put down great grandma, you know, or great grandpa. And then here we go. We're gonna do this too. I think if we have the time to do it, it's an exercise with that. That gives you a template, you know, to something for the mind, drawing an illustration. Okay, and then what I'd like you to do is what we're going to do here in just a few seconds. Try this out on your own. The purpose of drawing this out is just to bring it a little bit closer so that you can see that V shape that starts with you here at the point of connection at the V to mom, dad, etc. on. And you don't know who's going to show up. So if we could go ahead and proceed and do this. This is one way I would like all of you who are listening, try this now with us, but also try it on your own, you know, to see how it goes. Because in my heart, I feel this very strongly. The ancestors are wanting us to get to know them so they can assist us through this very challenging time in this period that we're in right now. I know they're not the only guides, but they are. I tell you, once you start working with them as guides and that they can give you information, they can help you with your healing. There's a confidence that comes from that, a trust and a sense of safety that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I would also invite you to go see a medium. You know, go see a medium and just see what comes up in the medium, but be open to it. Whatever it is, be open to it. So yeah, do you want to give it a go?
Great. Yeah, please. You'll guide us through a process here.
So everybody, what I'd like you to do first, close your eyes. Yeah, just take a few deep breaths, slow, easy, deep breaths, so that it allows your body to relax. That's it. Good. And as you relax and let yourself just be at ease here, just be aware of the backs of your eyelids, you know, what you might see or notice, thoughts that come and go across your mind, any sounds that you might hear in addition to the sound of my voice. Perhaps even notice the sound of the voice, a rhythmic cadence, and think as you breathe in, just to yourself, think the words, I am, as you breathe in. And as you release, relaxed. I am relaxed. Good. And continue to do it with that sort of cadence, just a steady, nice rhythm. And notice perhaps your shoulders relaxing, your stomach, where a lot of us hold tension, and the gut area. I am relaxed. Good. And I want you to, as you relax and find yourself more deeply relaxing with each and every breath, eyes closed, allowing yourself to feel comfortable and at ease. With your imagination, and yes, I did say imagination. Imagination has been underplayed. And in my world, imagination is the bridge that takes us to these various places we can visit in consciousness. And this could be, as far as ancestors, it could be a mother or father who's passed, a grandparent, a great-grandparent, someone who you might have very fond memories of. Perhaps being cared for by your grandparents or a grandmother or grandfather, but someone who has passed that is of your lineage. And in just a moment, I want you to think of a question that you'd like to get more information about, or another way to say that, guidance from any particular one of these ancestral family members. As you breathe and relax, notice which ancestor from your family lineage shows up the strongest. And again, you might see them in your mind's eye. You might hear their voice. You might sense their presence, or just know that they're there, or some combination of any of those 4 ways of perceiving: visual, auditory, sensory, or cognitive. As you breathe and relax, and note how they come to you at a distance that feels safe and comfortable. And whatever question you have that you would ordinarily ask, let's say a guide or a therapist or a psychic or a medium, think that question very clearly. First off, thank them for showing up for you. Please trust that when you've called on them, they hear you. It's not about belief or disbelief. Trust that they will hear you. And in your mind, very clearly, as you breathe and relax, state the question for which you seek a response, guidance, information. Take a few moments to formulate that question and then send it across time and space to this ancestor that, ironically, you see, perceive in some way right in front of you. Good. And take a few moments. See what you see, hear what you hear, the inner voice. Notice your sensations in your body. We often speak of having a gut feeling about something. You may feel that in your gut. You may feel it in your heart or in some other area of your body. So as you breathe and relax, trust what you get. Might be very short. Often spirit guides of any sort tend to give us very clear and specific answers. Sometimes we get answers or responses that are cryptic and may take a while to contemplate before you realize what is meant by the message. Note also that most of us have one of those ways of perceiving that's the strongest. What I mean by that is some of you are more visual. Some of you are more oriented towards hearing the inner voice. Some are more oriented to perceiving messages through their body, sensory, or through what we simply could call just knowing the answer, cognitive, without knowing how or why we know. And I would suggest also, if you happen to have a pen and paper nearby, is jot down that response. The ancestor that you addressed typically will not give you a lengthy answer, but relatively short and to the point. Sometimes it's simply a yes or a no. Sometimes just a few words. And again, sometimes it's very clear, straightforward, and direct, while at other times it may be something that is something you have to contemplate as you breathe and relax. Good. And thank your ancestor. Thank your ancestor for coming to you. Thank them for any further communication. Thank them for the response that they've given you. Good. And as you breathe and relax and allow them to return to their place in the afterlife, and gradually and gently bring your awareness and presence back into this present moment. Take your time. When you're ready, allow your eyes to open. Look around the room, helps you orient to the here and now, and maybe even stretch a little bit if you feel like it. And then bring your attention and awareness fully into this moment at this time. And we'll have a little discussion about all this. So thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Ross, very much.
Thank you for that, Stephen. That was really wonderful. I'm curious to hear people's comments and questions around that process when we get into the audience questions, which maybe we can do now, Stephen, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. So we've got a question here from Nicole, who says, if I don't know my father's family aside of my father, how can I heal all of that trauma?
Yeah, here's the deal. You don't need to. You don't really need to know every grandparent, great-grandparent, etc. A lot of people don't remember their great-grandparents, for instance. But I will guarantee you this, doing, again, what you can do is in your mind's eye, see that I make a V, and just look at empty chairs, where there are people that you didn't know or you never came across. Because when you call on them, when you invite them to participate with you, to communicate with you, they will be there. And you have to just trust that. So if you go back, let's say on your mother's side, 3 generations, you don't know who that individual is. You don't know who that individual is, but you can still communicate with them. Try it. Don't believe me? Don't disbelieve me. Like I was saying, try it out, see what happens, and see what kind of experience you have with that. This stuff is amazing, by the way. I trust that you guys will dive into it even further.
Thanks for that. And thanks, Nicole, for the question. There's another question here, and I'm curious also to hear people's comments on the process that Stephen just guided us through. So go ahead and throw those into the comments. This question is from Shamanigans, who says, do we need to heal our ancestors, or do we heal ourselves, and in doing so, heal the whole lineage?
Really good questions. Both and. That puts it in a place where it's not one or the other. Do we need to heal ourselves? Yeah, it's amazing these days. And I'm testimony to this because as a healer, as a therapist, shamanic practitioner, I've been trained in some very amazing ways to recover from trauma. So you can do it in this lifetime here. EMDR, using eye movements or clicks. That's oversimplification, but that's a methodology that I've been trained in, that I can use. Somatic experiencing, Peter Levine is the one who introduced this. I've trained in it, and it was like makes sense, because where does trauma live? Largely in the body, even though it certainly affects our mental, it affects our mind, of course, but it stays with us in the body. If you were traumatized, and especially if it was a lot of trauma over a period of time, you're going to carry that. The body, it's instinctive to want to protect yourself. And it's possible to unwind that these days. Okay. Second, work with the ancestor in the healing. Okay. A question might be something like what we just did is, please, spirit, great spirit, indicate to me the ancestor that most strongly carried this same pattern. And what often will happen is something like this. As you visualize that, the ancestor will stand up, or a spotlight. This is how this happens for me, is a spotlight will shine on that ancestor and say, this is the one you work with. So give that a try, and see what happens with that. And then say, I would like some healing work on this particular situation, that I have trouble sleeping, to use a simple example. And then what can happen is that as you stand or sit, typically seated, and you close your eyes, the ancestor will hold their hands up. Believe me, don't believe me, try it though. Will hold their hands up and send healing power to you for that particular situation. To me, it's amazing. I get all excited about it because it's amazing to me that this can happen. If you'd have told me this like 25 years ago, I'd go, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Go read a book. Yeah. Yeah. Go watch a movie or something. But now, having gone through a lot of experiences like this, I have no doubt. But it's not about me. It's about you. It's about you taking some chances with this, that they can help us from the afterlife. It's not, I have a friend here in the neighborhood. We talk, and I say, were you raised religious, blah, blah, blah. His parents were atheists, and he's declared himself an atheist. So we have fun with that, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what do you think happens after you die? And he said it very bluntly. He just said, that's it. That's the end. Okay. That's his point of view. And for him, guess what? Probably true. But I know in my heart of hearts that I will be able to transit back and forth in between spirit world, the afterlife, and I want to help my children out and my grandchildren out. It makes me emotional to say that, but I know and I trust that I'll be able to do that sort of in the background. Like don't look at the man behind the screen, the Wizard of Oz. I want to be that man behind the screen, when I'm dead. I trust that's helpful. So.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It reminds me a little bit. I wanted to ask because you mentioned in the book that it might be surprising to some people when they connect with their ancestors, how the emotion or the energy of that ancestor has changed so much because they've actually evolved while they're in the spirit world since they've left their
Right.
human body. Yeah.
Yeah. I was shown a very specific sequence that the soul goes through. You could say the soul goes through following death. And that is, it's very detailed, but it's basically 4 worlds that they transit through, and 3, what was called rooms. This was told to me that they go through for their teaching, their learning, their healing, and how to be a spirit in the afterlife, an ancestral spirit, all the way until they sort of graduate after they meet first source and center. And that's the term they use, is the first source and center, spirit, source. There's other terms for it, God. That's okay. But you have to go through a sequence of stages, before you get there. And I can see the image in my memory, transiting back and forth, from this world here to assist those in their lineage, and then back into the afterlife, to continue their progression. Originally, I was told, listen, this is for you. It's not about teaching it. And then about 4 years ago, they said, okay, you can teach this, because people aren't going to think it's crazy. They're going to get it. So we'll see. But the gist of it is, Ross, is that, yes, the spirit of that deceased loved one, the ancestor, comes back, helps you out. You get little hints. You get the whisper in the ear. They show up in the dreams. You may not even attribute it to a specific ancestor, but they're here. They want to help us out. And I got to tell you, thank God they do, that they're there and available to help us out. We just need more of that, that sort of guidance with this kind of craziness that the world is going through. Planetary change, global warming, and all that stuff. The planet is changing and humans are changing. The children coming in with their eyes wide open. It's amazing. So things are changing in the genealogy. Anyway,
Wow.
Yeah.
No, fascinating. There's a question here from Sabine, who I know this is a great one for you because you've done so much work with animal messengers as well. And in the book, you talk about messengers in the form of animals and in dreams. So Sabine says, some kinship structures include animals in their approach to healing. For example, totem animals, spirit animals. Could you speak about animals in ancestral family healing and their absence in ours?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of a point of view, really. The fact that they're, and I want to say spirit animals, not just animals, but spirit animals. What I teach with that is a way of receiving guidance is from the physical animals in the world that show up to you in an unusual way and or repeatedly are there to give you a message. Are they part of our ancestral lineage? Personally, I believe so. I know it, for myself. I know that's true. However, what I want to get to, like with the book and with the teaching, I want to first focus on the human ancestors. Because what you begin to see is that they can also invite certain animals to show up to deliver a particular message. They might say, hey, tortoise, I'll give you, okay, here's a good example. Something came across my desk earlier today about elephants in India. And just one piece of it, that they're very gentle creatures, surprisingly, for their size. But when since you were just there, they transport the elephants, in trucks. but they put little chicks in them, in with the elephants. And supposedly the reason they do that is the elephants don't want to harm anything. So the elephants hold steady. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So they don't step on the little chicks.
Wow.
Look it up, you guys. Look it up.
Wow.
A friend of mine just passed that along.
Amazing.
Yeah. The wisdom of the animals, not spirit animals, but yeah, the animals and spirit animals. So I don't know if I trust that I answered the question, at least to some extent. That I forget her name, but
Sabine, yeah.
And also I want to say to you, Sabine, yeah, if you find an animal, a specific animal, not spirit, but is introduced in your research with your family's lineage, great, go for it. Trust it. I don't think it's a common thing, but trust it. For whatever reason, you've been tagged, to have an animal as part of your lineage.
Sabine has commented, thanks, Stephen. I know it too. Animals belong into our family lineages. Thank you.
Good. Yes. Good. I would like to see more of it personally, but it depends on how a person holds that.
Right. There's one from Carol who says, how do things work when you are adopted and have never met your ancestors?
Excellent. You don't. You could do an investigation to see if you could find your family of origins. You could do that. I don't think you have to. To do the healing work and the guidance. What you have to do is first off imagine, and then second just know that they're there. When you do any kind of exercise like that and say, I want to call on one of my family ancestors from my biological family, qualify it. And that will handle it. It's you setting, many of you have probably heard this, if not all of you, is like a big, something that's important is your intention. If your intention is clear that you want to contact someone from your biological family, then you can do so. Listen, people, you're a lot more powerful. It's been said before, but allow yourself that power. It's not power over something. It's power that can emanate from your heart, from your gut, that will help you have a fulfilling life. That's my pitch.
Wow. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question here. And I think it's along similar lines. This seems to be a hot question for people, but it's similar but different, from TLN, who says, I've been told by a shamanic sound healer I need to connect with my ancestors in Glastonbury in the UK to help me in my own practice, but that's going way, way back many generations. How can I connect with ancestors going that far back if I can't get there physically to the land?
Do this. You don't need to go to the land, It's nice if you can, but I don't think it's necessary, because they're in a sense, they're still on the land, the ancestors. I would call them the elders of the ancestral world. And after that's why I think 3 to 4 generations, when we talk about family ancestral patterns, and I know we're running out of time, but if you take that further and further back, you're talking about, you got millions of ancestors. So don't think that way, though. Just call on, say, I would like an elder ancestor to come to me. I have one that, it's a whole story. One that's I consider to be an elder ancestor. Are they related to my lineage? I don't know. Probably. But it goes so far back. We're talking 25,000 years, is what I was told. So I didn't even bother to try and trace that, I would have had it in 4 different rooms, to have all of the there. And I think the message that keeps coming through here is you don't need to specifically know this ancestor or that one. When you're speaking about an elder, though, address that. And here's a song, real briefly. I'll just sing one verse of it, but it's best repeated it's best sung 4 times. Ancestors, ancestors, we are calling. Ancestors, ancestors, we are calling. Come, come, come. And then repeat it 3 more times. Watch what happens. Close your eyes. Say thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Before we close, Stephen, is there anything that you'd like people to know about? Any upcoming programs? Are you working on a new book? Anything that you'd like people, if people want to connect with you more, how they can do that?
Well, thanks for asking. Yeah. I have an event starting in July, a 7-week series, once a week with the Shift Network on this topic here. And we're going to go into even more depth. Hard to do that in an hour, but I trust I've covered some of the bases that can inspire and encourage you. So that's the Shift Network. Go to my website, dr, like as in drstephenfarmer.com. There you can sign up for a newsletter. It's got some other kinds of it. There it is. Yeah. Thanks, Jacob. There's some other information, etc., that you can get. And you can sign, if you wish, sign on to the newsletter. Facebook page, same thing, Dr. Stephen Farmer. And you'll find information there. This was posted, for instance, and I try to think of certain wise things I can say that I can put there. Once in a while, I come through some gems or I find some, but that's a way to stay in contact and stay tuned because, I've got 4 projects that I'm interested in diving into, and it's just a matter of segregating the time to do so and curious to do so. Oh, one last, I want to say one more thing. That's it. I'll shut up.
Please.
I was given this a while back, and it's the assignment was to write a poem in 10 minutes or less. So I'm going to issue that as a challenge to everyone who's listening. You too, Ross. What a trip it is. You can't think about it. You can't overthink it. So, and just have fun with it. It doesn't have to follow a certain rhythm or rhyme or, this or that or whatever. It's a little crazy, but man, I'll tell you, some really good stuff comes through. And it gets the writing juice. For me, it gets the writing juices flowing. So
great. Okay, everybody, let's do it. Write a poem in 10 minutes or less.
Yeah, I dare you.
It's been a real pleasure. And everybody, we've been speaking with Dr. Stephen Farmer. His new book is fantastic. It's Healing Ancestral Family Patterns, a practical guide to ending the cycle of intergenerational trauma. Of course, you can get it at banyan.com or come by the shop, corner of 4th and Dunbar in Kitsilano. We'd love to see you. And thanks to everyone in the live audience for all of your great questions and comments. It's always great to have it. And to our producer, Jacob Steele, who's always making these things happen and working in the background. He does such an amazing job. So thanks to him. And Dr. Stephen Farmer, really thank you very, very much for taking the time.
Well, thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Ross, for inviting me. I love talking about this stuff, and I could talk another hour with you, have a conversation with you, but I want to say blessings to every one of you, and thank you, ancestors, for your participation and your support for all these good people, and especially for tagging me to deliver this information. And I trust that it'll be utilized in a way that's going to make this a better world for all beings, not just humans, but all beings. So blessings to you all.
Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyan Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele, and I'm your host, Ross McKeechee. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyan Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyan.com.